Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode where we explore the question, how does one become an excellent coach? Just to give a little bit of background on Jordan, who is joining with us today, she is a powerhouse of a woman, executive coach, and serves in a leadership capacity in the coaching space as the Dean of Community, is a chairperson for diversity, equity, and inclusion. She is a coach educator specializing in coaching ethics and mentor coaching, and is our wonderful resident coach at Royal Telos Coaching. And as for myself, I train aspiring executive coaches in our ICF accredited coach training school, as well as consult in professional development, utilizing Clifton Strengths and Enneagram frameworks. Today, we are going to explore how does one become an excellent coach? Wow. Okay. So, Jordan, I've been seeing a lot of growth in the coach education space in general, and I have my thoughts too, but I'm also curious.
One of the things I think is happening right now is that companies from every sector, from healthcare to technology to education, are realizing the value of executive coaching. And actually, not just realizing the value of executive coaching, but realizing what coaching is in general. So, for a long time, people misunderstood coaching when they heard it. And
what do you think is happening to cause such an increase in coaching requests and the industry just being more recognized overall?
That's a great question, Bonnie. Align coaching more with consulting, someone to come in and give us the answers and solve our problems, or mentoring someone to come in and tell us how to do what they did. But coaching is its own mindset, which is developing capacity in the people that we serve. So I think that is finally catching up with the clear understanding of what coaching is. And the other part is just very obvious. Companies realize that they can thrive and produce more, become more productive, what's the thing, and increase their revenue by having people who are trained to be confident, critical thinkers, understand how to make better decisions, understand how to think through situations in a different way. So that's what I think is happening. I think it's a really growth spurt, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, it's interesting because you almost think, why would you want to hire on people who won't just tell you the answers directly? I was having a conversation before, this is a few years back actually, about this topic. And I remember this individual telling me that the non-directive method just is not effective enough. And or at least the type of coaching that we talk about and that we do. And that comment was interesting. And I explored it a little bit more, asking why it is he thought that it wasn't effective. And in his mind, he felt that companies and people who are really busy, executives, they just want the answers. They don't want to sit there and have to mull over and have to think about what they're thinking about and all of that. And that comment was very interesting because that is so the approach that is so common in how organizations typically function and run. Not giving the space, time, psychological safety, opportunity for the people, the executives, the teams. It just does such a disservice. It doesn't allow them to really grow in their own self-awareness and building upon their own resilience and emotional intelligence and these other characteristics of what makes a good leader, let alone a good individual contributor.
Yeah, I think that is exactly right. But I have to say, I understand a little bit where that person may be coming from. So when people think about non-directive coaching, this is what sometimes pops into their mind. They have the idea, say I'm coaching you, and you say to me, Jordan, I'm just not sure what pathway to take with a certain team member who doesn't really seem to be going with the flow. I find that I have a lot of anxiety about working with her because she pushes back so hard. I'm really stuck. So what sometimes happens when coaching isn't as sharp as it should be, and even when people assume what they're going to get. So the coach may say something like, well, What do you think you should do? That's where the biggest pushback comes from leaders, in the part that if they thought they knew what they should do, they wouldn't need a coach. So another approach that actually gives them some traction and some thinking space is to explore with them what may be happening in that conflict. It's more than just mirroring back to the client. They give us a scenario, we look at them and smile, and then we say, what do you think you should do? I get it. I get why that's awkward for people, because the proper question might be, what's the most challenging thing for you about dealing with this particular leader? Where are you getting stuck mostly on how they're coming across with the team? On a scale from 1 to 10, where is it now and where do you want it to be? So those are exploratory questions that help the leader think, and they go way beyond the whole smile and say, what do you think you should do?
That's a very interesting point. Maybe that individual encountered coaches who just go in circles. And I have heard from other clients where they have interacted with coaches where just asking them, what do they think is a solution? It's not helpful at all. And it's just, if anything, that is just too early in the coaching conversation, if anything, because that person hasn't even thought about what they haven't thought about what they thought about. And to jump so far ahead into asking that question is just, I could see now why that individual probably had that reservation.
Absolutely.
Coaching. Speaking of this topic of our episode, how does one become an excellent coach? I want to hear your thoughts, and I will share my thoughts too on this, but what typically happens when you see coaches who want to be at that real professional level, but they still feel like they're missing some pieces? And what are those types of pieces?
This is a really good question. I don't think I have met a coach, new coach, seasoned coach in training, who really doesn't have the end desire of being an excellent coach. So that's the first place that I'm always assured when I get ready to work with someone from a mentoring point of view or any coaching point of view, is believing in their original intention. I believe every coach wants to serve their clients well. But some of the things that get in the way and keep us from becoming an excellent, and I'd also say impactful coach, is thinking so much about how we're coaching. It seems really odd, but when we get into the coaching session, it's really time for us to let our own assumptions go, even let you've heard the comment about the next powerful question. We think about those things, or can be thinking about those things when we're in the coaching session. But what we really need to be thinking about is, what is in the best interest of my client in this exact moment? It's turning off the chatter from the head and being present with your client, and not knowing the next powerful question, but just choosing to be present with them in the moment. Listen to what the client's saying, where may they want to go and what they're saying, and how can you ask a question that comes directly from the conversation they're having with you. So the first part I think about becoming an excellent coach is being present. You can't be an excellent, impactful coach if you're not in the same space with your client, if you're not present. If you have a conversation running in your head, I wonder if they like me or not. I wonder if I'm going to be able to solve their problem. I wonder what their problem is. Why would they have that problem? What am I going to say next? What's the next powerful question? What should I get them to do? Those are all things that can run in the background of a coach's mind that can keep them from being an impactful and an excellent coach. So first of all, just being present.
Totally agree. And I know for somebody that is naturally a fast processor and naturally comes from more of a teaching background and doing emergency type of consulting work for startups, my natural propensity and inclination is to go rapid fire fast, diagnose the problem, let's get things going. And to have had training in this area to pull back and become very self-aware that this is my tendency. And is this actually serving my client by inserting my own expertise? In some contexts, it was helpful when it was needed in a consulting context, but especially in a coaching context where they're looking for someone to provide space for them to process, it was definitely not helpful. So I love what you said. I totally am in agreement that creating that space for the client and making it about their experience and not our own insecurities projected onto them is such a key foundation of a great coach.
Absolutely. And something you said earlier. So when you were asking our clients, what do they think they should do next? You hit the nail on the head when you said earlier, it's not a bad question. It's a bad question if it's given way too early. That question about next steps comes almost in the last quarter of the coaching conversation after there has been that awareness and that discovery, making sure that you and your client are approaching the real problem, not the one that they may have come in with, they perceived it was, but what has emerged out of that conversation together. And then towards the end of that, when there's the part of the coaching conversation that's about designing actions, that's a question to ask, what might they do next? What do you think would be the best way for you to move forward in this situation? But asking that at the front end, just they tell you what their challenge is. And then for a coach to say, what do you think you should do? First of all, it's an awkward question for the client because they will feel it in that point and they'll say, well, that's what I'm here for. Or they may expect you to solve that. But it's a really good question when it's appropriately placed in the coaching conversation near the end of that conversation. So I love what you also said about understanding what we're there for. We're really there to support the growth of our clients. We're not there to critique ourselves and our skills. Did I get it right? Did I say this right? If we're partnering with our clients to open up some thinking space for them, we're doing it right. And following that partnership all the way through the coaching process helps every single coach refine their skills. The tricky part is it can be really scary when you're the coach and you feel like, I want to give my client a solution. I want to give them value. If I just sit and listen, I'm not really delivering enough. And that is so untrue. Think of how many times, Bonnie, you've been told by a client, thank you for giving me this space to process. That's value. So even redefining for us as coaches what we consider to be valuable exchange for our clients and give them more of that in honesty, it's not our talking, it's their talking that gives them that valuable takeaway.
I love that. I so love that. And it actually makes it easier for us as coaches, just pulling ourselves back and not needing to jump in and try to be the savior or the rescuer or be the centerpiece of this story or take the center stage of this story. I'm also curious. I've seen the same patterns that I see in amazing leaders. Many of them have these coaching characteristics in them where they are just sitting and really listening before jumping to make conclusions, before forcing people to go rapid fire fast, and then being frustrated when their team isn't doing what they're supposed to be doing in their mind. But taking that coaching approach to pull back and assess what could be happening, having that like curious mindset to go and ask them questions and explore what could be really happening and what is coming up for their team members. Coming from the educational space and being trained on how people learn and how to communicate so that they understand what it is that you're understanding or trying to communicate. One thing I often see in a lot of facilitation or educational type of tools and resources, workshops, even, I don't think we're still there yet in helping the majority of those we are interacting with and being the most effective at doing that. And what I mean by that is there are some individuals in the crowd, in the teams that struggle with learning in a way that most typical people, it's easy. There are individuals that come with learning disabilities. There are individuals that have behavioral type of struggles and challenges that's clouding their perception and judgment of how they see reality. And that gets in the way of productivity and work. Certain individuals are extroverts and introverts. And some clients, they don't like Zoom. They don't like being on video. Majority of them are introverts. They prefer phone calls, actually. And some of them don't even prefer phone calls. They just want written interaction. So all of these components are characteristics of people that we often dismiss accidentally simply because we just don't know. We're not aware, we're not trained in that area. And also, it's usually the dominant, the extroverts, they're the ones who set the standard. So I think that being said, it is absolutely important as coaches, we are coming from a very removed position that we have to consider that there are all these other facets of who are working and interacting with. And we just don't know. We just don't know how anything is landing for them. It was very difficult for me when I was first starting out as a coach to lose total control, essentially, of me trying to take over the conversation.
I'd say that every single person, whether they're in a group or an individual, they have their own learning style. It doesn't matter if they have different levels of ability with that learning style. It doesn't matter if they're a fast processor or someone who has focusing challenges or even comprehensive challenges. Everyone will come into our space with a different way of learning and interpreting what's being learned. So when you're working with a group, it's really important to know when you're coaching a group to know if you're coaching a group of 10, have the expectation that you've got 10 different approaches to learning. And so when you think about that, oh, it's not just the one or two who may have some learning challenges, but it's all 10 who have different ways of approaching the concept of learning and growing together. It's particularly important with team coaching. So when we come in as coaches, knowing that, then one of the things we're going to look for is maybe even asking that question to the group and having them share out loud, what's your best way of learning? How do you take in information when you hear it? What's your way of processing? People will normally share. I'm an internal processor. When I hear a question, I'm not going to be the one in the group who's going to blurt out an answer and think out loud. I really like to give it some thought. I'm present, I'm engaged, but I'm processing inside versus the person who says, when I hear a question, I want to talk out loud and think through it and say all the words in this space. That's the way they're coming. Someone needs a visual cue. When I hear a question, what really lights me up is when I hear the question coupled with the visual, with a picture, some kind of thing that's going to give me a picture of what it might look like. When I hear someone talking too loud or too fast or in a way that is distracting, maybe they use their hands a lot, I can't really focus on that. So getting a good read on how the people learn and getting used to asking our individual clients and our team clients and our group coaching clients, how do you learn the best? What kind of delivery really is great for you? And what kind of delivery kind of walls you off a little bit and causes you to have some resistance? There doesn't have to be an intellectual ability or disability. There has to be the understanding that everyone comes in with their own DNA. I like to say one fingerprint and one size fits one. And if we think about one size fits one as coaches, we're going to be curious about everyone in the room and not just looking for maybe special circumstances in the room. I think it's so important.
That's so great, Jordan. Absolutely. I totally agree. One thing about our coach training program is all of the students that enroll, they actually have to submit personality assessment reports as well as telling us who they are essentially in these shades. And from that space, we actually customize some of the workshops. And that's actually what we do. Some of our workshops that we do for our corporate and startup clients, we're always assessing who it is that we're actually engaging with. And I think most great coaches do this already, but I think we try to take it a step further and go much deeper into it. So I love what you said, just being aware that everybody is coming with their own unique way of learning and to be mindful of that.
There's some of the most powerful things I think it takes to become an excellent coach. And if you notice the things that we've talked about before, it isn't focusing on our coaching skills. It's really focusing on what is in the best interest of the client, like I said before. We can get tripped up and lost at wanting to become an excellent coach by learning how to do things. We get so focused on our own development. And how do I feel about this coaching session? Or am I good at this or not good at that? But once we learn the coaching flow, that framework of non-directive coaching, moving the client from setting that agreement all the way to designing action for them. So that's like the bookends of the flow. But really, becoming an excellent coach has to do with becoming an excellent partner to the clients that we work with. How do we create and open up a learning space for them so they can have the maximum opportunity to look at the things they're thinking about, maybe from a different perspective, maybe to get feedback in a way that they won't get it anywhere else, because leaders can be lonely because they don't have people just to go and say, you know what, I am really stuck here, because they're expected to know all the answers. So one of the best things we can give them in our space is you don't need to know all the answers when you come into the coaching session. Together, there's an opportunity to explore your different options, the approaches. Why does this matter? What does this mean? What would be the most impactful way for you to engage in this conversation today? And what would you like to get out of it that can serve you the best? Those are some of the elements that if we focus on those things, Bonnie, I know that every coach who wants to be an excellent coach or even move towards that direction on the scale and continuum of excellent coaching, they're going to get there by just having the right perspective where they are and where their clients are. So I love that question. I don't think it's a hard thing to become an excellent coach, but I think it's a purposeful thing to become an excellent coach.
I love that. I also realize that some people who might be listening might have been really practicing removing own insecurities, all of this from the coaching conversation, but I still feel I want to be this excellent coach. I'm just not there yet. And for those people who might be feeling that, I think one part that's very crucial is that you have to keep practicing and you have to keep getting feedback as a solution. I'm not saying it's the only solution, but a huge component of how you actually grow is when you're doing the hard work and you're constantly moving the needle towards momentum and building. That 1 to 5% growth every day is all you need.
Absolutely.
And then the second component, having feedback and having someone with you along the way who's ahead of you and who can provide constructive opportunities to grow as a coach, it's only going to exponentially grow the process. And that is what you do, Jordan. That is what I do in our coach training program. And we've just seen in a matter of such a short period of time, coaches just exponentially grow.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yep. It's an amazing thing to watch a coach grow in their own skill. And I can tell you, because I've had an opportunity to mentor coach the coaches going through the program, and watching them come in with a sense of caution, maybe a little self-doubt, nervousness, and then working with them, mirroring back to them what's showing up for in the room as I'm watching them coach, and pulling out those things, honestly, that they're doing right, that they're already doing from this place of like, their gut tells them this is the way to go, and they listen to that, and the results are phenomenal. So providing an area of support, of feedback, of belief, like I could not mentor coach or one-on-one coach the executives I work with if I didn't believe in them. So as a powerful coach and impactful coach myself, it all starts with what I believe. And I believe people are intensely capable to accomplish those things that are important to them. That's my starting point. And so when coaches start with that belief in their clients, and that's what's most important to them, it shows up in the way that they're able to coach and moving people further along towards the goals that they want to accomplish.
So good. I'm so glad we got to touch up on this topic.
Yeah.
It's a question that people ask all the time in different varieties of ways, just how I can really level up in becoming an amazing coach, an executive coach. What makes one coach different from another coach in terms of in their excellence. And I can't wait until our next episode where we're going to explore other facets of the coaching industry and how coaches can contribute and be a part of that. Thank you, everyone, for listening to our first episode, How Does One Become an Excellent Coach? And we will see you next time.
Bye.